Welcome to the Event Planning News Community Podcast. I'm your host, Bob Toovey. I have a question for you. What does it take to start a podcast? There's a lot to think about. For instance, what equipment will you need? How to find the time to record when you have a job and family? How do you approach people to be guests? As a beginner, it could be quite daunting. I invited 3 amazing event industry podcasters to share their advice on getting started. Naomi Tucker, host of Planners on Purpose, Uncle Chafan, host of Events Demystified, and Victoria Matey, host of What Have I Told You, the Event Psychology podcast. There's plenty of great advice, top tips, and a few interesting stories too. There are certain mental challenges, not just the physical things, that you need to get over, like getting used to the sound of your own voice. Everybody hates their own voice at the beginning, don't they?
I feel like I
Not
did
necessarily.
that. Yeah, I did that type of exercise back in radio because I actually started in radio throughout high school and college. And you're right, actually in the beginning, I did not like the sound of my own voice, and it did take a minute to get used to it. But then as you get used to it, it no longer bothers you, or you no longer hear it. So you're like, okay, whatever, just another thing. But I think it was a realization. I mean, I was also young, right? It's like high school when I think I started when I was 16 in radio. So impersonable, like being easily embarrassed if something doesn't sound right. All the things that as an adult, I'm like, whatever.
How about you, Naomi?
Yeah, I just think after a certain point in time, you start to just get over yourself. So, but initially, yes, it's like, oh my goodness, I don't like the way I sound there or here, or you start to pick up on some of the phrases that you say that you would rather not say. So you start to clean those up. So definitely there's that hump, that learning curve to get through when you're podcasting, but you get over it quick when you want to just get things done and pump things out.
Yeah.
I think you find when you said the word totally, like 10 times in 2 minutes, you start to realize, okay, maybe I shouldn't be saying that often. It doesn't fit well. So you kind of remember for next time. But the thing is, you've now got to possibly cut those out, or at least you're going to listen to yourself saying it over and over again. So after a while, it becomes somebody else. If you know what I mean? It's not you anymore, really. It's just a sound, and you can then edit and you kind of get used to it.
Yes, but it depends on the number of edits, Bob, because you keep editing that same word out and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
We got to do something about this.
Well, that's the thing. You have a big poster on the wall above your station. So as you're recording your podcast or you're doing an interview, it keeps big poster that says, do not say.
Stop saying like.
Yeah. Or totally. Oh, you're totally right. Yes. Totally get what you're saying. I totally keep saying that word. So yeah, that's awful. But
I think it's also about, realizing that it's not just you who does that, because it helped me to kind of think about, oh, actually, yes, I repeat some words, or I do it like in a not nice way, or the way that I think would be the ideal way, but we are not ideal, and realizing that kind of keeps you going, keeps you, in that mode when you try your best and you kind of improve with every time.
Yeah,
that's something I want to get to in a minute, but which is well, nobody's going to listen to your first 5, 10, maybe 20 episodes in general. So you've got all that time to practice not saying those words without anybody having. It's like you're going to make a mistake, but because nobody's listening, nobody knows you made a mistake. So you can carry on getting better and better and better as you go through, which is handy. But forget that. So the other thing you've got to get used to is that you have nothing to contribute. Some people go, why should I bother podcasting? I've got nothing worthwhile saying. Is that something you guys ever thought of? You know, that I'd love to start a podcast, but Uncle, you've got
I'm
lots.
too opinionated to be like, I have nothing to say. I've got lots of things to say. The question is, do I want to say it all?
Well, I think because with you being on Instagram and then on LinkedIn and you're doing a YouTube channel and you're doing a podcast and I know you're on Threads, I think you've got more than enough places to express yourself.
Actually, believe it or not, I started my podcast as the avenue to express myself before I got necessarily busy with the other channels. The other channels came more of a need to market the podcast in the first place, but the podcast was really the avenue that I chose to be sort of like my broadcasting channel, you know. So I knew what I wanted to say. I knew what I wanted to convey out there, and I knew what I wanted the messaging to be. And then all the other channels became more of a support system to this one main channel. And then obviously evolved over the years because Instagram took different forms of the way you would express your thoughts. You know, stories became a thing, IGTV became a thing, which now it's not anymore, apparently. All of those little, repurposing of content that played a role. And then also I'm a first and foremost, I consider myself a writer before I consider myself an orator, right? Someone that likes to write before I like to say it out loud. So my brain always thinks better in writing than in just like going off, the sleeve and just doing that. So I would always write my thoughts down, and then I can express them from there. So LinkedIn plays a huge role in the sense that I still love to write posts because that's how I express myself the best in shorter format versus just coming off the cuff on video, on stories to just say something that's not really connected to nothing. And it's kind of like there's no story to it. I don't really necessarily approach it that way. I like my little containers to have their topics, and I kind of like to create this storyline. So a lot of the social channels, I feel like they're more enablers of those off the cuff. I had a thought, and that's about it. There isn't really anything to connect it to, like a series. And I feel like my brain doesn't work like that. Victoria can dissect more into it because she's all with the neuroscience of what works and what doesn't. But yeah, to your question, I feel like podcasting was first before I was going out there for in other channels.
So you've always had something to say, which really helps when you feel. Has anybody else sort of felt like, well, I would podcast, but I don't really have anything I think anybody would want to listen to? Has that been sort of like an impediment to creating that podcast and moving forward with it, or have you found it easy to get through that?
No, I don't believe I've had that experience. Probably just really kind of shoring up exactly or targeting exactly what you want to say and how it's connected to, let's say, your overall brand. I believe if anyone's starting a podcast, it's important to ask yourself the question on what is my story? What am I going to talk about? What do you want people to know? Or what do you want to ignite in people? I feel like that's pretty much what you should look at and then formulate those questions and start to ideate on the content that you would like to put out into the world. Like Anka was saying, many people are out here just talking about randomness, which maybe would work for them, but especially if you're looking to kind of move your brand along, it's important that all of those pieces be connected. And I feel like that's what works best. And it really keeps you dialed in and, moving along, let's say, these content pillars that you have for yourself and your brand.
How about you?
Yeah, I think, Naomi, you're making a great point because it depends on what purpose does your podcast serve, right? I mean, there is very great podcasts out there. They're just entertainment only. And if that's the channel that you want to channel your inner rebel and just be spitting out everything that comes through your mind, that's entertaining to some people, and you could be very successful at that, right? But I feel like some of our podcasts in our conversation, they're very much related to brand in a professional environment, right? So then it does matter what comes out there because it does reflect back on my company, it reflects back on my branding, it reflects back on my thought leadership. So yes, there's some constraints, but I think those boundaries are good boundaries to have, depending on, again, what is the purpose that you serve. And I love how Naomi was saying, what are you looking to ignite, in the world? That's beautiful.
How about you, Victoria?
Yeah, well, I think I can totally relate to this because when I started my podcast, one of the primary goals were to kind of spread the knowledge directly from, researchers or behavioral scientists to kind of to help them share their knowledge and be a channel, through which they can kind of translate that knowledge to the event professionals, because I'm not necessarily the expert in each specific topic. So I wanted to bring those who, studies like whose focus is narrow on a specific topic to talk about different things, and as, kind of as they apply to the event planning and event marketing. And so I think partly was about sort of trying to, like Anka says, to express thought leadership through that, and to kind of get involved, and kind of get them involved as well, and kind of spread that knowledge better than, I would, for example, for a specific topic. And I thought that it would be also a good idea because through audio, through podcasting, I could reach a wider pool of audience as well.
Cool. I know from our previous conversations that some of your content, your podcast takes ages to produce because you go into the research and you're sharing those ideas. Has that been a barrier as well, or how's that worked out?
Not for me, because I am already in that area, in that space. So it's more about, finding time and do the post-production well or better to, to my liking, than, actually, I didn't have any issues with the research stage, so to say, because I have a lot of things to share and a lot of people that I would love to talk to. So I do have like a list of people to kind of reach out and say, hey, can you come and join me and talk about this and that? So for me, the research stage is actually what I love doing, and I have no problem with, kind of listing the topics that I would love to talk about.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of processes, and having a solid process for a podcast that involves, here's a Calendly link so we can not go back and forth 1,000 times and you can pick up a date. Here's a form that an intake form that will provide me with the information right off the bat, bio, headshots, what are you passionate about? What are some fun things that nobody knows that you like, to be highlighted as an icebreaker? And what are some of the things that you'd like me to ask based on your expertise? Because if you're my guest, I want you to shine and I want to make sure that I put you in a good light. So if I can do a lot of that pre-planning in advance and I don't have to go back and forth, to me, that's a safe timer. And honestly, I used to spend way more time even with that process in place than I am now with a bunch of AI tools and automations that I've created for myself, including a fully automated podcast custom GPT that pulls now all of that information from my spreadsheets, from my forms, and all I have to do is, hey, generate an intro and a script or like a questions for Victoria. And I don't have to prime it with anything. I don't have to tell it who Victoria is. I don't have to tell what her expertise is, what she's interested in, because all of that has already filled out in the intake form. And now my GPT will automatically take it and create this beautiful list of questions that highlights her expertise. And then from there, that's where the thought leadership comes into play, as Victoria was saying, because you already are an expert in your own area. You can have a conversation now to highlight the other person's expertise. Although I will tell you, I had guests that they were like, their topic of expertise was totally over my head, like totally like not understanding if they're speaking English or not, because it was so technical. But still, I tried to make it and bring it down to earth in words that, people will understand. Your average event planner, because that's my main audience, would understand what we're actually trying to talk about here. Because from the get-go, the goal of my podcast was to kind of translate in layman's terms a lot of technicality that comes with technology, with AV production, with AI. So being in a specific niche, that it's also the guardrail of how you're going to create your flows, your conversations, who you're going to bring to have a conversation with, and all of that. But again, for me, the process makes my life so much easier, because I am all about efficiency and make this be as easy as possible, because there is still time in post-production. So I don't want to waste a lot of my time in this, because the more time you waste, the harder it is to keep going, right? And if you're in for the long term, you better make it easy for yourself, so you don't look at it as a chore. You look at something that's enjoyable and you can keep going years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Once it starts getting to look like work, to
Yeah.
look like work and not something that you enjoy, then you might want to go back and check your processes and make sure that they're a little bit tweaked so that you are able to enjoy it. So I definitely agree with both of you.
Yeah, we'll cover tools a bit later on. The only thing I find about Calendly, since you mentioned it, is it's great when you're doing with one person, but if you've got more than one person and each one's got their own Calendly account, then it's still difficult, because you've now got to look at that one and you've got to look at that one. Is there any matching days and times? It gets really complicated.
I think it depends on your subscription level, because if you have the pro, for example, I have the pro for my podcast, you can actually create group calendars and it's super easy. I've never had issues to
Brilliant.
to get a group of people together on the same on the same date and schedule. Again, probably it's a function of the pro version.
Okay, well, we'll have to do a completely separate episode just on how to use Calendly properly.
I think it's a question of like, how much money are you investing in your podcast to make your life easier, right? Because I mean, there's free tools out there, plenty of them, but then you kind of have to find your workaround in situations like this. But there's also pro tools out there that will probably save you time in the long term, but it will come at a cost, right?
Well, at least by being free, you've got a chance to evaluate each one to see, does it fit in? Is it the right thing for you? And if it is, then you can then, well, we've all got fixed budgets, so you have to be careful what we're spending money on. So by testing and evaluating, you can then try and pick the best one that works for you, which is pretty cool. But that brings us on to the whole thing about what do you need to start a podcast when it comes, I mean, we're talking about, let's start with the hardware. I mean, microphones, laptops, tablets, smartphones. I mean, what's the minimum? So if you're just starting out for the first time and you've got through the, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? What tools am I going to use? You've still actually got to make a recording.
Right.
You're still got to do that bit. So what's the minimum? Because unless you've proven that your podcast is going to be, it's sustainable and it's going to last a while, you don't want to spend any money on it unless you have to. So what's the minimum requirement for a beginner?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say a little bit and I'll let the technology expert weigh in. But I mean, for me, I would just say you can start so easily these days. I mean, I've listened to podcast episodes where people are in their closet, on their phone, in their car. So, I mean, if you really wanted to go simplistic, you can, but I know that we all operate in a professional environment, so we want to make sure that it is relatively nice. So, I mean, a computer, a nice microphone, maybe some editing software that you can do for real inexpensive or probably even nothing, can be where you start at. And then from there, be able to have that distribution platform to get your message out to all the different podcast where people listen to their podcasts. So I would think at a bare minimum, that's what you would have. And then as you get used to it, then you start to care about how things sound and, how things are edited. And like Anka was saying, making your life a little bit easier and putting automation in there. And then it will just grow with you.
Yeah. No, I would totally agree with that, Naomi. Yeah. Go ahead.
I would just
Victoria.
add, I would just add that to me, from the get-go, it was important to get the audio right. So I invested in a good mic first. And this is just because I knew from research that audio is sort of more powerful than video in attention and brand recall, and, and how it helps make it memorable. So I ensured that I've got a good mic to sort of build on that. That's the only sort of hardware tip that I have for now.
Well, I will add to that, depends how you're starting your podcast. Yes, you can start with the simplest of gear, a laptop, smartphone. You don't need a lot to start with. I think, as Victoria was saying, most important part of that, because it is a podcast, audio is important. It could be a video cast. For me, video is important because I'm streaming it across video channels, not just audio. But in the beginning, the first few seasons were audio only, and I made sure that all audio is solid, right? But then it comes the question now, is it just me, or will I have guests? Will this be virtual recorded? Will it be in person? And this is when things can get a little tricky. And it's funny because I get all kinds of requests and questions because we have a podcast in production studio, from people asking, well, how do I bring, different guests in, because I'm trying to do this and we're all in different locations, or how do I record someone in person and one virtual? And it starts to get tricky, and that's where probably starts to become more important, the type of setup you have, so that you can make the distinction between, okay, this will be a conversation that, as we are having right now, it's a virtual setup. We all have our own microphones or on our own set. I cannot control Bob's sound or Bob's microphone, nor can I adjust Victoria's microphone. So I have to rely on the guest to come with a bit of a setup themselves. I can give them guidelines, and I do send out, podcasting guidelines on how to make sure that you're sounding the best way possible. But you don't have as much control versus, for example, when we go and record in person, and I can set up the camera, I can set up the microphones, I know what I'm recording, and I know what I get from that production, right? But that also can come with a different type of cost, a different type of investment to begin with. But even with that, like if you want to do it yourself, the do-it-yourself way, there's microphones out there that will help you. Like I always recommend something that Rode microphones that, for example, for the wireless labs, they are really good, excellent quality. Shure microphones, if you're looking for something that's really quality and you're static and you're all moving around, a Rodecaster doesn't hurt if you want to have multiple channels with some music in the background or some jingles, or it all goes to how far do you want to get into it. And there will become a question of who's paying for this? Will you bring in sponsors? Will you need to look at different financial ROI out of the podcast itself so that you can pay for it? Are you paying yourself this hours of production that it takes? And what is the long-term game plan with the podcast? Because if you're just doing it for fun, start with the basics and then just grow from there.
Mm-hmm.
That's great advice. If you're just starting out, then don't spend a fortune. I mean,
You don't even know if you're going to stick with it.
well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you could 6 months down the line, you can go, I absolutely hate doing this. This has ruined my life. And I've spent thousands and thousands on this.
Right.
What
People do that a lot.
What am I going to do with all
they
this
do.
equipment? Yeah. Oh.
I mean, that's how it was for me. I started off like, oh, this podcasting thing may be a great viable option. I'm more of an introvert, not necessarily liking to be on camera back then. So I just did Anchor. Anchor was free at that time.
Yeah.
I think now it went in with Spotify now, but it was totally free platform, and you can just do everything you needed there. And that was a really great entry level point for me. But then as I started to care and started to get something that I really wanted to talk about, then it, kind of elevated from there. And I cared about the mic, so I got a good mic, cared about how things, the capabilities that I had. So I eventually left Anchor and went on to a different tool. Now I'm on Buzzsprout. So it's just like Anka was saying, you start to really ideate on what your vision is for your podcast, and then that would bring in the other elements that you need to have solutions for, and then you go from there.
I will say though, on-site recordings, they bring a different kind of energy. Like, you can record virtually, which is great, but those face-to-face conversations really allow for stronger connections, maybe like a better body language interaction and a more natural conversation flow. But again, that comes with additional resources. You will have to, invest in some good microphones, isolation. You can't record everywhere, anywhere, like in a, train station. You're going to have to be more aware of your surroundings and where you're at. And if you're doing video, then it adds the next level of production, because now you're going to talk about, is it just one camera? Is it two cameras? Is it three cameras? Like, what about lighting? Like all those things that will add up, right? Because you want to have a good production value if you're going to do it in the first place. But there's something to be said about the in-person, right? Like that connection that can be formed and the level of energy that comes out of that.
Absolutely. I mean, I got rather excited when I got myself one of those little pocket Zoom audio recorders. You go around a conference or a meeting going, oh, I need a soundbite from you and you and you. And you just stick it into people's faces. They say something. Great. That's another episode done. That's brilliant.
Yep.
But that's really good for sort of like offsite. You're not home. You're at a conference or you're at a client thing and you want to do a recording. So yeah, you can use a Zoom thing. And I know you have a microphone.
You can even use the Rode microphones that you plug into your phone. That's what's cool about the Rode microphones. It has the transmitters, and then receivers go straight into your phone. You don't have to carry additional gear. It's wireless. I did that. I had 2 episodes recorded at IMAX just last week. One was with multiple interviews from many people, as you just said, Bob, like sound bites. I want a showcase for this. And the other one was more of a session, that it was an interactive session, and then making sure that then you mic the other person too if you're going to record it. I think the first interaction we had, because we had event planners sharing stories, we were talking, we had our mics, and then we realized that, wait a second, we didn't capture what the other person was saying. So let's go back to that.
I mean, the Zoom recorder is really good because it's got audio in as well as audio out. So I can connect up Synco wireless microphones and just tuck it on somebody's shirt, jacket or something, and then plug the receiver into things. So it becomes something that's not obvious. They're not stuck in front of a large microphone. So it becomes much more of a natural conversation after that, which I think is pretty cool. So there is a difference then. Well, obviously there's a difference between recording in your home studio and recording on site somewhere. How much of a difference is there? Is this something anybody should be worried about, or can you reuse the same equipment?
I mean, what I have in my home studio, I'm not traveling with that on site. It's really solid and it's really static. And just the idea of like ensembling all of it and taking it with me just gives me the like, don't want to deal with it. So I have a setup that's completely separate. I call it my remote setup. And that's what I take when I go on site. That's what I take when we go on location and record. And it can be different because like a lot of the lighting that I have here, my roadcaster, my camera, my microphone, all of it is pretty solid. And I want to keep it that way because then you run in less issues if you have to, jump on a podcast and now you have to rewire everything because it was in your car for something else. So if you have the ability to have 2 separate setups where your home setup stays home setup solid, so you don't have to constantly pack it and unpack it, and then have something more flexible that you can go on the road with. As you said, your Zoom recorders, I like my Rode mics, I like my cameras, the DSLRs that I carry with me, and then some lighting. And there's actually so many opportunities right now to buy like small LED panels that are really strong, just to have some lighting, because some places are just not naturally well lead, right? So if you can do that, because that's really the goal of your podcast, to have those on-site recordings, I would suggest that you set up something for yourself in that nature. But again, that's not to say, like Naomi was saying, if you just want to record audio, you can easily do that on your phone. Like in the beginning, I just had those wireless mics, and I would record audio on the phone, and I had my recording track, and then I would just go back to the editing and clean it up a little bit, and that was the recording right there, you know. So there's options.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about having two separate kit, one that stays at home, the one that travels with you, is that if you're having the one kit only and you're traveling with it, when you get home, you go, oh no, I've gone and lost that important cable, the only one that works for this add-on that I've got. I'm going to have to buy it, and it's really expensive. And likewise, you arrive on site and you've left that important cable at home. So separating the two out means that that bunch of cable stays with that kit, this bunch of cable stays with that kit, and I will never combine them. They'll always stay together, wrapped up in a big box.
You make a good point. I agree.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than turning up and go, oh no, I've forgotten the audio cable. I can't do it.
And you need it right then, and there's like, oh no, I have this recording, and it's happened before with other setups, but I totally get the point. Yeah,
it's nothing worse than looking totally embarrassed that you've arranged 4 people to have a chat and you've left home one cable and nothing works without it.
It doesn't look good on you, right? It's like, what kind of host are you? Like, what is happening here?
We have a bag that's just full of the same cable, so 100 of the same cable in case you lose one. I don't know. Well, we've mentioned guests and grabbing guests and talking to guests, whether it's face-to-face or on Zoom. But the question is, how do you get a guest? How do you persuade someone to engage and talk about their favorite thing?
Oh, well, for me, I've approached people directly. Most of the times it's people either that I've interacted with within a professional setting, or I know of them, or I've heard their presentation, or just within my own leisure research that I've come across them, and I want to get to know them a little bit better. And I feel like that leads to just a fun, authentic conversation. But I've also had people come to me because, they're out there trying to be a guest on podcasts. I'm highly selective of those people. However, many of them can be a great viable option, and they have a great story to share, and that they align to what my audience wants to hear. So typically, once I figure out the person, I usually try to meet with them beforehand to just align on the direction of the podcast. I do, like Anna says, Anka says, sorry, I do use Calendly, have a form for them to fill out. So some of that is automated, but definitely like to get a feel for the conversation, for the person, get a alignment going before we actually schedule time to record. And I feel like that's really important. And so it can be not cookie cutter, and it can be authentic, and you could definitely relate to what they're talking about, and both of you have something to give. So
how about you, Victoria? Have you already had any troubles getting a guest, or
No, as I said, I do have like a long list of those who I wanted to talk to, so it wasn't a problem at all for me. So what I prefer to do, I do all the research about the person and the topic that they are expert in, and then I provide them with, I kind of reach out and say, hey, would you like to join me? Because I find you, very interesting, professional for this specific topic to talk about. And then I just, if they say yes, which I think it might be just once or twice that they said no to me. And it was like, just because it wasn't really, good timing or whatever. So basically, when they say yes, I then send them a list of questions, because I prefer to do it as easy as possible for them. So I don't kind of ask them to fill out the form, because I feel like they already invest a lot of time for me, right? They do it for me, first of all. And then, of course, I understand that they it's an opportunity for them to be featured and kind of express their opinions, but still I understand that I'm asking for the time investment, and then I want to make sure that they don't really feel like that's a lot of things that they are required to do. And I send them a list of questions and say like, hey, if you feel like something is, not quite a good fit, or, you don't like the question, just let me know. And other than that, we just, kind of go ahead and schedule the time and just go online and record it.
I don't know. I like to make my guests work for their keep earn their keep,
Well,
because
it's
honestly,
it's too,
I provide a platform for them to share their thought leadership. I
yeah,
provide excellent production. You better be doing some work too.
yeah.
Because last thing I
No,
want is to show on camera and have no idea what exactly is that they're about. And to be honest, I'm all totally okay with not having pre-calls. I've had a wide range of CEOs, founders, industry experts, industry leaders, and that's just based on my wide network of connections that I've built and the solid reputation that I built. I've never had anyone say no that I invited, just because, again, I think by the way you set yourself up in your space, then you have a different opportunity to reach out to people and then ask them. But at the same time, I'm not going to ask anyone, as both of you mentioned, because it has to fit a certain topic. It has to fit a certain season. There's seasons when, say, we're only talking about mental and physical fitness. So then I would reach to the people in those spaces that do have something to say on that regard. Then I also have seasons on AI. Those would be my AI experts that I would go specifically in one industry and reach out to them. And then there's also the people that I feel like I would meet and then have a compelling story, and they just need a platform to like amplify their voice and their story. I love a good underdog story. And I found that professionals are more likely to show up and deliver because they understand the value that it brings to their brand. It can get tricky with bigger names. Maybe Victoria, you're talking about that, where if it's a bigger name, you want to like make it as easy as possible for them. But even then, like if you're setting yourself as someone of value, as an authority in your space, you respect me, I respect you. It's a two-way street. I'm not asking you too much just to give me some information when it comes to your bio, to a few things that I would like to know about yourself. And I've had really good success in conversations and very authentic conversation with people that I've never met before. And the only time I've met them was for the first time on the recording. And I love that authenticity of it all. Like how it was just like we had this natural connection, and the flow of the conversation, it just went from there. And that's okay too. I don't have bandwidth, to be honest, to do a lot of pre-calls. I rather just go straight into it. And then I'd rather decide at the end of the conversation if this is something that's not usable or not. Although I never had, any situations where it was so bad that I'm like, there's no way you're posting this.
No, actually, the high profile people were the nicest, so it's not about
Right?
that. It's just that, no, actually, yeah, I mean, that's how, it always happens like this. I don't know why, but it happens like those who are like, you would say high profile, they always the most wonderful people and how they respond. And yeah, so it's not about that. It's just for me. And again, I think it depends on the context and the goals of, each specific podcast, and also how established it is. So mine is very narrow focused, and I wouldn't say that would be like that it has, I don't know, millions followers. So I felt like, because I'm kind of trying to use this as a channel to translate that information, research information, into an applicable sort of chunks for the event professionals, I felt like taking time from those experts is already enough. So I try to make it as easy for them and also for me, because that would allow me to go through bits of information and make sure that it's actually practical and sort of digestible for my audience. So it's kind of two-way I was killing two birds with one stone by doing this.
Yeah, I think whatever works for you. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? Going
Yeah.
back to that process, making that process work for you, because what works for me might not work for you, or the other way around, right?
Yeah, and it's a creative process, right? So, do I do pre-calls for every single person? Probably not. But for people that I don't absolutely know, and
From
you know,
Adam.
yeah, it's like I want to get some kind of like
Yeah.
connection there. But it's not like we're regurgitating the podcast over again. It's like we really are just trying to establish connection. And it's helpful because some guests may be kind of in some type of marketing cycle. It's nice to know
Mm,
what their marketing cycle is. Perhaps they're releasing a book, perhaps they're releasing a program, and for you to know about that a little bit ahead of time so you can work it in creatively into the episode is really helpful to do as well. But I agree, it's a creative process. You're co-creating with your guests. You want it to be easy, but then you want also to let them know that you truly care about what you put out. So what they put in is very important as well.
right.
I do like what David T. Stevens, your good friend, Anka, your press up buddy, as I like to say, after the
Yes.
challenge.
Yes.
I like what he has to say about grabbing guests. He says boldly, like you have no fear, which I think is great. An absolutely great way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I recall him because I produce his podcast, and we were talking about, his guest for the year. And yeah, he can have that approach of like, I'm just gonna ask them, and the bigger the name, the bigger the potential. Why not? The least they can do is say no.
Well,
So
that's
I'm like,
exactly what I was going to say.
go
There's
for
no harm in
it.
asking, because if they say no, you've not lost anything. But if they say yes, you've gained. So that's
Exactly.
just stride up to them and say, "I want you on my podcast." That's it. Job done.
Yeah.
I like what you said about that. Yeah. So another time we'll talk about your IMAX press up challenge.
Maybe next time when we bring it to Europe, Bob, you'll join us. Who
Oh,
knows?
that'd be so cool. That would be so cool. Well, let's move on. Well, so you've had guests. You've started your podcast. You've got the equipment as basic or as complicated as you want, and you've got your guests on. And I think we've touched on this briefly, which is, do you produce an episode? This is in mind for people who are starting out. Do you produce an episode every week, forever and ever and ever, as long as you're able to? Or do you do seasonal batches? Like as you said, Uncle, you do seasons on AI, then you'll do a season on something else, which I think is a great way, because that way people who are interested will listen and then become aware of you and listen to more of what you do.
Yeah. I feel like there's no one size fits all approach when it comes to this. However, a continuous, predictable schedule can really help build momentum, especially in the beginning, and it can keep your podcast top of mind for listeners. Personally, I found it more sustainable to release twice a month than every week, although we do have the anniversary month, which is July every year, where we would release an episode per every week. But let me tell you, the the work that it takes to release an episode every week, it's a lot. So, I mean, we're right now running 10 seasons, 165 episodes, and I'm actually planning to go back to once a month for the end of the year into the next season, just because my life, my work commitments have really increased, and at the end of the day, like, you have to make it work for you. Like, I know that Bob, you wanted to ask us also about how do we make time to record when we also have businesses and families and responsibilities, right? So that kind of goes hand in hand with this. Like, you're gonna have to make it work for yourself so that you can be consistent and keep going. I try to record in batches every time we launch a new season. So, for example, for our next season, I already have about 10 episodes recorded. But again, I'm not gonna post those right away. It's going to take a minute. It can be hard though on those conversations. What I've learned, it has to be a general topic if you're going to do that. Like, for example, when we talked about eventful AI and the evolution of AI, I had to release every episode like on the dot, because if I waited too long, whatever we talked in this episode would have been outdated by months, right? So it depends on the topic, like what are you talking about and what the topic is and what the season is, and then create your schedule according to that. But again, make it flexible for you, and then you can take as many breaks as you need to, just to make sure that you are sustainable in this process.
This is a
Yeah,
great
I
point, actually, about going from the topic and how relevant it might be in a month, in a half a year, right? Because for me, for example, the topics are all evergreen, so basically it doesn't matter. And when I started, I actually was so enthusiastic about all that process that I had 2 episodes per month, and then I quickly realized how much effort it takes, how much of my time it takes, and I felt like I was burning out with that specifically, but I didn't want to stop. And so I kind of slowed down, and I think, I started doing once a month. And then eventually I switched to 1 episode per 2 months, and then I stopped because now my podcast is on pause for various reasons. But then I thought that realizing what works for you, as Anka says, what schedule works for you and for your podcast as a channel marketing, promoting your thought leadership and promoting your topics. This is what is most important thing to think about when you think about the schedule.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I guess if I had a choice and if I were to recommend, I would say maybe have a weekly schedule, like maybe once a week, but that cannot be sustainable for some people. So I think it's important to be showing up consistently, however that consistency is, whether it's once a month, twice a month, weekly, but making sure that you can fit it in your busy schedule. I think post-production definitely is where a lot of time is spent. So having some support in that area would really help. When I batch, it works really well, but sometimes for me, being able to sustain times where I'm traveling, like you said, you all went out to a conference, you get back, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I have all these things from the conference to do, but then I also have to continue to make sure things are showing up consistently. So finding out how to kind of mediate both of those can be the challenge. And that's where I feel like my podcast can, there's an opportunity there, because when I start to get real busy with clients, then hey, I'm not going to be able to pump out as much as I usually do. So that's why batching definitely helps, and maybe having those episodes where you can just release them periodically over a particular time. But if you can stick to your normal cycle as much as possible, I feel like that would be the golden ticket for yourself. But if you're doing it all alone, you don't have a team, you don't have support, you can definitely be spread too thin. So definitely be mindful of how much you show up and try to do it in a sustainable way.
And I think consistency is really a
Mm-hmm.
good point to think about.
Yes.
Because I mean, without that, you leave your audience like wondering when the next episode is going to be out. And then if it's consistent, and if you can kind of prepare in advance, like batching all these episodes and then releasing it according to a schedule, then it's much better and it looks more professional, and it's kind of creates this anticipation emotion in your audience, right? Because they kind of expect it to be released according to a specific schedule once a month or once a week. And then they kind of mentally prepared to tune in.
I would add to this, if you have the capacity and ability to build a newsletter list around your podcast, it really creates that connection with your audience beyond the random Spotify listener or whatever people might take their podcast on. And that way you can also keep them up to date with some of the things that you're going through, or some of the updates that, hey, like I send a monthly update on what episodes have come out this past month, and those are my opportunities to also keep them in the loop. We're gonna be going to a monthly base, or we're gonna be going in the month of July. Stay tuned. We're going to every week, and this is what we're doing, right? So you're kind of keeping them in the loop with where you are in your process, so that way they're part of that, connection, part of that conversation, and you don't leave them hanging. I remember liking a podcast and listening, and then it just goes blank, goes bazink, and I'm like, no knowledge. Like, what happened? Did they just give up on it? Did something happen? Like, you have so it's hard to come back to that if you don't have a bit of a heads up. Hey, by the way, we're going to take a break because we're going to, busy season. It's like very normal in events to go through a busy season. So everybody would understand. But again, like, if you can bring your newsletter list and build that's yours to connect with beyond all the social channels that they might be here or not next year.
Anka, do you use any specific tools for that? I mean, apart
For
from
the newsletter?
Yeah, for the newsletter for your podcast audience.
So I have a website for the podcast, and through the website, I invite them to sign up to my newsletter. And then my outside of the podcast newsletter, that is, my company's larger number newsletter, they get a tidbit of an update on the podcast and the ability to sign up for the podcast if they want to be part of that newsletter. I'm going to be going through a transition where I might phase out the larger newsletter for a little bit, because we're going through a few changes, branding and whatnot. And then I'm going to invite that list, as an action item, to bring them onto the podcasting, because that's going to go only once a month. And that's kind of like my bandwidth at this moment to how much I want to send out newsletters for the time being, and then see who wants to transition. But then whoever was on that initially, they're still there, and they do have the ability to opt in from LinkedIn, from not Facebook, we don't have a Facebook, from Instagram, from TikTok, and the website itself.
I think that's a complete episode, or even multi-episode, of how to market your podcast effectively. Because
yes,
yeah,
for a beginner who's thinking, oh great, I'm on Spotify now. Well, that's done and dusted. I'm done. That's going to be great. All the listeners are going to come flooding in, and when it doesn't, because it's like most things, it's great to be. You're going to think, oh, I'm going to be found now, because everybody goes to Spotify to look for a podcast. However, everybody's on Spotify. So you're just one of a million other podcasts out there. Some have stopped because everybody got into podcasting during COVID lockdown. When face-to-face meetings come back, nobody had the time to keep them up, and that's why they've died. But yeah, you've got to do much more active read content on Instagram, on LinkedIn, newsletters, websites, a whole another episode. I think
I will tell you, and the amount of podcasts that have launched, especially now with some of the AI tools available, I stay away from podcastlaunch.ai podcast because it has been really such a weird, I don't know, output of very low quality podcast just for the sake of branding something or marketing something. So they're using podcasting as a channel, but there's no thought leadership. I was like, no, stay away from this. This is not a good trend in our industry, in our podcasting industry right now. Yeah. And I am for AI, just so I make the disclaimer.
Well, seeing as you've mentioned AI, and I think doing a podcast episode with AI, not good. The thing about episodes, you could have come up with an idea for one. Do you ever get stuck for an idea? Do you ever come up with, I need to do an episode? I have no idea what I'm going to do it on. I'm totally baffled. I'm stuck. I'll just go and have another coffee and sit in the garden for a bit.
I typically have too many ideas. I'm like Victoria. Yeah, just too many ideas that I want to implement. And yes, I do try to go along with the themes, right, in different seasons, but just constantly getting in the habit of just ideating and putting them down on, a running list. That's exactly what I do. I'm always variating titles and themes, and throwing those in the list too. And then using AI in order to kind of build that out a little bit, and just to do further brainstorming and ideation around those as well. So I typically have the opposite problem, have a lot of ideas that I'm still waiting to make happen. So
Anka, you're not answering this one.
I do not run out of ideas either. Like Naomi, I have to keep a running list of all the ideas and thoughts that I have. And actually now with some of the AI tools, like for example, what I would do, for some reason, I get my best ideas in the shower in the morning. So I would get out of the shower, get on my phone, go in ChatGPT and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking to talk about for my next podcast, blah, blah, blah. I speed out my thoughts, like in a very unstructured, unpretty form. And I just ask it for like a quick outline, like just to have my thoughts put in an organized fashion. Because next time I go into my ChatGPT and I have my collection of, things that I've asked it, I know exactly where to take it. And it also makes sense now because it's more enhanced and evolved than what I had initially thought about. So I can build upon that. So like having that outline already ready to go, then I can go and take it further and explore and go more in depth. But yeah, having a place to store your thoughts, especially if you're on the go, if you're on the run, if you're like, maybe you get your best ideas walking outside, just put it down in on your phone in a note somewhere, and then go back to those ideas, organize them, figure out a way to organize it, because then you can also have a lot of notes everywhere. And there's like, where did I had that amazing thought about this topic. Where did I put it? Right. So it also goes back to like, again, the processes along the way help.
How about you, Victoria?
Yeah, I totally agree with Anka because I also get a lot of ideas, at some points where you're not, at your desk, and you just need to sort of remember that nice, lovely idea that came to your mind. So I use, different like tools like Evernote to put it out, just if I'm on the go or, traveling or walking or, like doing some home stuff, and then just come back to it and implement it and sort of outline it in a more organized way. But I so much agree, organizing stuff is probably the hardest and the most necessary task.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds cool. We have touched briefly on branding benefits for personal and business wise. Was there anything you wanted to add? Because I've got a great question I want to ask Victoria in a minute. But is there anything else we want to talk about branding? I mean, anybody else want to say anything?
I mean, I would definitely say that podcasting is an excellent way to build your personal and business brand. I've had more doors open to me because of the podcast than before. If you can consistently create valuable content and establish yourself as an expert in your area of expertise, it really builds credibility and trust with your own audience. And I haven't run a personal podcast. This is a business podcast, but for me, it's been a great tool even for deepening connections within the industry and showcasing, my expertise and using it as a business card sometimes, because it's funny how many people then you get to meet at random places, like IMAX was an example, that know you and you don't know them, but they really think that they know you, right? So
yeah,
because
it's a
you do
little
establish a
different.
connection. Yeah, exactly.
Well, the way I see it is you're creating relationships with people you haven't met yet.
Basically.
It's like celebrities, people go up to celebrities. Oh, I love your work. I know you do this. I know you like this. And they're looking at them, how do you know all of this? Why do you know all of this? So is that kind of not quite a celebrity relationship, but is that one-sided where people already know who you are and what you do and what you like and where your expertise lies? So you are building a trustful relationship, which I think is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and I feel like the cool thing is just the little nuggets that you possibly leave in your episodes. And typically, you know, in podcasting land, you usually get those things towards the end of an episode or something like that. So you can start to see like the people who actually are listening to it all the way through versus the first couple minutes. So it's really nice to deepen the relationship, and it also helps you to kind of understand your audience and where within an episode you're going to put certain things in order to kind of appeal to your target audience. And I think that's fun to play with in terms of marketing.
So my next question, and this is for Victoria to start with. It is said that podcasting is the metaverse for the ears, which I love that. So what is the benefits? What is the neuroscience behind podcasting? Why is it so attractive to people? Yes, we've got video and we've got it on our screens and phones and everywhere, but there's something special about podcasting, about the audio.
Yeah, I would say more like with the audio generally, because we've got numerous evidence that kind of shows that audio is much more powerful, for example, for brand recall or for attention, than video, let's say video, because video is it's like, you know, the channel that we're using, you know, we've got different senses, right? And we engage a sense of vision in many cases more often than any other senses. But when they test in neuroscience research, when they test different senses, they realize that actually audio in many cases outperforms any other senses and how it plays out at a you know, neural level. And so, for example, that's why, and to your point, Anka, that, you know, we there was a research that found that people are more likely to follow the recommendations that they hear from people than those recommendations that they read. And so it basically shows the power of audio and how it can affect people's decisions, people's actions, right? And so we also know that from research that audio ads drive 50% more attention than visual ads. And so that comes from the solid scientific studies, and we can draw on that, we can build on that by utilizing audio more in our work. And podcasting is one of the examples of how we can leverage audio for the better to make sure that our brand is more memorable, that we catch more attention and all that. So I think utilizing podcasting, but also, of course, paying attention and considering like working on the quality of that sound is also important, because there was one research about high quality mic and versus low quality mic or audio, right? And there was a conference and they tested a speaker's talk, and they found that people sort of rated this speaker 20% better when they listened to that speaker in high versus low audio quality. So that's why I think when you work or when you start a podcast, I think it's important to make sure that you've got a high quality audio first. So these are the things that, you know, come from research, from neuroscience, from behavioral science, that in kind of show us how this channel is important to employ in your work. If you decide to go for it, make sure that you've got a high quality audio, and just just enjoy it, because it might bring a lot of good for your brand, for your event brand or for your personal brand. Yeah.
I want to tell a quick story to emphasize what Victoria said. Although I am a big fan of visuals because I am a visual person, I love branding. Even my podcast has been branded from the day one. I knew if it's going to be video, it's going to be as branded as it can be. But starting in radio, right? Back in the days, I grew up in Romania where we didn't have TV for the majority of the time that I grew up. So the only connection that we had with the outside world was through radio. So radio was a huge source of news for us. But what would happen is, as you would listen to the radio all day long, it would be just going in the background, or you just actively listen for the news and whatnot. I remember forming this solid connection with the personalities on the radio that would come up at different times at different slots. And it was such an emotional connection just by the ways of by the radio waves. And I didn't really understand where that was coming from, but it's again going back to the neuroscience, the behavioral science behind of it. And then that kind of drew me into wanting to start being radio too. I started as an intern, and then have my own few radio shows. And even after I left one certain radio station because I moved out of town to college, my mom would still get those sackfuls of letters from my fans that the only connection we had was audio, right? It was through the radio. And I mean, I had marriage proposals come through those letters. All kinds of things. Like people will send me gifts. Like this was back in the days, where people could find you. Like, I don't know, do you know your mailing address and stuff?
Wow.
So it was, again, how important that connection was with just the voice. Like people didn't know how they look, but in their mind, they could make up anything they wanted, like how you would look, because it was just the voice that they had as reference. So you could be like the Cinderella looking person, where in their mind, that's what they saw by the voice that they listened to, when in reality, you could have been like anything but, right?
Well, and I can back up your story with the research finding, because one study found that listeners glean emotions better from voice-only communications. And so, I mean, like you say,
I'm wondering if it engages multiple sides of your brain. That's why that emotional connection happens.
Well, I think there are various factors that influence it. And yeah, so without going into complex details, it's just that I think, and actually when you talk about like branding, right? So we usually assume that branding is all about visuals. But again, studies show that audio branding or sonic branding is much more
I'm big on that as well. Yeah, audio is huge. Like I know exactly my podcast sounds this way, this season, this jingle, this effect. And actually, I have my husband as a professional music composer that has built my podcast tracks from the scratch. And on top of that, different seasons actually have different variations of the main track based on how I want that season to sound like. Like, for example, there's the same bass, the same melody, but if I want this track to be more rocky versus more R&B versus more trance, he would recompose my tracks to fit the bill. Again, I'm spoiled.
No, so it goes back to the way it engages different brain regions, right? So yeah.
Amazing. I don't know how to follow that up, because that's just amazing stories, especially with bagfuls of fan letters with marriage proposals. I think it's like the audio version of OnlyFans. It's crazy.
It's so funny.
Yeah. Anyway, so we talked so much.
And then nobody sent me a letter after they saw me on video.
No.
I'm kidding.
Anyway, I'm not even going to try to attempt to summarize everything we've talked about, because we've just covered everything. Is there any shortcuts, any tips, apart from please have a bag full of batteries for all of your phones, Zoom recorders, flashlights, microphones, everything you're going to need power for? So is there anything else about on-site or home recording?
I would just say if you're starting, keep it simple to start. Just keep it simple. I think sometimes the simplest execution is the best, and it helps you to continue to be authentic and have that authentic conversation, so that things don't come off like overperformed. So I guess that's what I would say in terms of shortcuts, to making it easy, and just have fun with it and enjoy yourself. And I think if you do that, from there, it will just grow in that light, which is a great thing.
Cool. Anything
Yeah,
else?
what I would touch on is if you have the ability to, spend a little extra on tools like, for example, the script, which uses AI and it's a visual text editor. It really, really shortened the
I
amount of
love the
time
script.
that I need to spend on just removing filler words. And this is me coming from probably you, Naomi, too. Sounds like spending time on any other audio editor or video editor to remove cut by cut by cut every single filler word that it
Yes.
would annoy the crap out of me. And nowadays, it's so much easier. Like literally, with one push of a button, you have 300 filler words removed.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So worth it. And then it's more than just that, but it's also the repurposing of that content, getting your transcriptions, getting your captions, getting articles and blogs and snippets for your socials, that it can all be done within the one tool. I wish they would be a little bit more flexible in their plans of like how they structure it, but it's a conversation for a different time. Just something that will help you in that post-production hard days when the only reason why your podcast is not on air is because you were procrastinating because you know how long it takes for you to get it edited. But there's also people that they're really like, okay, we're just putting it out there as it is. More power to them. That's not me. So
Yeah.
if you can find a tool that helps you, go for it.
Oh, in that case, let's skip straight to recommended tools then. Right, so we've got Audacity, yes or no?
I don't, does this still work? Because I feel
It
like
does
in the
for some
beginning it did.
people.
I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
Because
But
they
I don't.
stopped updating it.
yeah, it's not been updated
Oh,
for a while, but I've got it installed and it works.
Okay. Because that was open source. It was a great editor for many, many years that I remember using.
yeah. GarageBand is a relatively good one too. Like if you're a Mac user to do
Yeah.
editing.
For
Not as
audio.
robust as the script though. Yeah. Mhm.
We keep talking about the script. I must get an affiliate link for that. Riverside for online recording and a bit of editing.
I would
Yeah.
add StreamYard on my end just because I've been using it for 5 years and now it has quite a few AI functions as well, like creating all my snippets and my reels. They come outside of the episode right away. They it generates on the back end. I don't think Zoom does that yet.
Somebody
No.
recommend Opus Clips.
Yes, that's
I
a
would.
great tool.
You know, okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
Opus is a good one. Video is a good one, but I like Opus too because it has a really great feasibility with YouTube. Like if you're trying to run clips and just want to post in your YouTube link and get those clips, it does that as
Yeah,
well. So I recommend that. And then Squadcast for recording. I know you mentioned Riverside, but the script is paired with Squadcast, and
right.
that is a great tool.
Is good? Okay.
Yeah,
I,
they're all together in one package. So since they're merged, so that makes it nice to just have everything
Easier.
all in one place. Yes.
I did have a recommendation from David T. Stevens. He let me know a good tool to use, and that's Tree Fan Events.
That's right.
Yes, there you go.
We do production for select clients. Again, it goes back to purpose, bandwidth, timing, and price.
Cool. I think we've gone through everything that have had prepared. I don't think there's any further questions, and I think we've been talking for long enough. I think it's
Can I ask a question of all of you?
please.
Okay, so with all the AI tools that are on the market, and I've actually posted about this on my podcasting YouTube channel, and there's this tool called Notebook LM, and it's a very interesting tool because here's what it can do. You can feed it several transcripts, several sources, audio, video, documents, and then it generates a podcast-like style interview with two AI hosts that would have this natural conversation where they even say like and things like, filler things that humans say. And so far it's like about 10 minutes long, but I tested it on one of my seasons. I took the entire season, I ran it through the tool, and I got this highlight of about 10 minutes long of all the things that we were discussing within those multiple episodes that were hours long. Do you feel like there's going to be a future where us, the host, might be replaced by an AI host with so many tools coming about?
I do. I mean, I don't know about replace. I feel like we're going to have to show our value in a different way. And maybe is this video, Anka, that you're talking about? Or is it
No,
just
it's audio. It's audio only right
audio?
now. So Notebook
Yeah.
LM, it's a Google's a product.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe video is kind of where you can see people authentically and know it's them versus AI, but there is that capacity. I mean, I had a full-blown, hour-long chat with ChatGPT. Like, I do think that definitely is where we're going, and it's like, okay, well, how can we show our value? Yeah, should that come about? So I do think it's interesting.
It is. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like that's when, like you said, it will be even more important for people to be authentic and human
Mhm.
in this type of environment and this future, because an AI generator could always generate content and it could make it very credible, but it won't have the depth. And Victoria, you can go more into the neuroscience of this, of how people connect to people, audio or video or whatever the means of connection might be, because we relate to each other's weaknesses, not just strengths, right? Not just our positives, but also to, like, we're humans and we all mess up in one way and we all do these things this way, and that even creates that connection, right? Versus an AI will always be perfect.
Yeah,
Somewhat.
so the
Yeah, I
quirkiness
always
is a good thing. Yeah.
go ahead.
Go
Go ahead.
ahead.
I just want to say that I never believe this idea that AI replaces humans in any aspect that we are talking about.
We should
So
talking
I
about
feel
20 years.
well, I guess we will see it increasingly more sophisticated, of course, but I just don't believe that it will ever reach the point of being human in a way that we understand it, or the way that we are human. So I don't think that, to your question, I don't think that AI can replace us. It can enhance our work in many sort of different ways a lot, but there's gonna be always gonna be that human touch that it cannot replicate.
Right. So it's like figuring out what that is. What is the human touch that is not able to replicate our quirkiness, little things like that can really help us figure out how we adjust to what obviously is on the horizon.
Yeah, and I think in many cases it's about our irrationality as well. It's a combination of things, like we are irrational, we we are influenced by various factors that AI cannot predict and cannot replicate again. So that all the things that makes humans human.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see what the future brings, for sure. I mean, I think I worry more about my kids as I worry about myself for what the future might look like.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do get is, for every interaction we have, we learn something about the other person or other people. We grow a little bit or increase our knowledge a little bit. Is that something that AI can replicate?
I mean, definitely knows me really well. Like if I ask my ChatGPT based on our
Oh,
2-year interaction, I'll
yes.
tell you, I'm surprised at the things that it knows.
I mean,
Like,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was running a quick exercise. I was like asking it, like based on all the interaction we've had, what are some things that you think I don't know about myself, right? It was very interesting. Like you should run that exercise, see what happens.
I did that. It's actually really impressive. But again, it summarizes the information and kind of analyzes it
Exactly.
well. But then can it do or will it take some specific action as if a human, as if it is a human? I don't know. I mean,
Not this version, but we're definitely the future is looking different for sure.
It's even getting a bit worrying now.
Naomi, you were trying to say something. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I mean, I don't have anything else to say, but I do agree with you. I feel like I can ideate with my family or others, but then I want to go to see what ChatGPT thinks because it has so much of me inside of it that it knows. And, it makes those generalizations as a result. And usually it's dead on, which it's enlightening to say the least. And it's just highlighting where I think that we are going to go. I feel like this is only obviously the start.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think we ought to end it here because it's now getting very worrying about what AI do for us. It can become like our carers. You haven't showered for 2 days. Please go to the bathroom. Be good, is it? Anyway, come on. We've talked for ages, and if we've got anything else to say, we really ought to do a part 2. So, thank you, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
It's been a fabulous chat. Learned stuff and explored things. It's really good, and I'm hoping anybody who's thinking of a podcast is going to learn something from this and give it a go and just have a go at podcasting. I think more podcasters are, the better it is, especially within the events industry, where so many have started, so many of them have gone to the curbside and they've not carried on. I think more voices, the more interesting conversations there are, the better it is.
yes,
Absolutely.
your
Well, Bob, I want to
voice
give you a heads
matters.
up. I just want to give you kudos for really elevating a lot of those voices and a lot of the podcasts, especially through EPN and the channels that you have access to. You really are doing such a good work in our industry. So I just wanted to say it out loud. You are appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Agreed. Many thanks.
As at least I know I'm going in the right direction. Thank you, ladies.
Enjoy
Thank
your
you.
weekend.
Thanks again to Victoria, Anka, and Naomi for taking part. Links to their most excellent podcasts are in the description. If you would like to be a guest or have an idea for a future topic, then please get in touch. Links for that are in the description. Don't forget to subscribe to EPN Community Podcast on your preferred platform so you'll be notified of future episodes. Lastly, thanks to our partners and patrons, Fair.app, FizzPod, Chatty, Messer, and the Power of Events. Until next time.